Hi troops, Koala here and welcome back to the Armorcast channel. I hope you're doing well today. Tank cannons have come in all shapes and sizes since their inception in World War I. From short-barreled 75mm guns, the famous 88mm of the German Tiger, 105 or even 152mm howitzers, to these days 120 and 125mm smoothbore cannons are your typical standard for main battle tanks, some 5.5 to 6.5 meters in length. That's 18 to 21 feet. You had infantry cannons, assault guns for destroying buildings and fortifications, recoilless rifles, 155mm artillery pieces, and countless more. But sometime during the Cold War, they all seem to adopt one very distinct feature that's become ubiquitous among them ever since, and that is these bulges halfway up the barrel. What are they for? Why are they so popular? And when and why are they needed or not needed? Let's unpack in today's episode of Koala Explains. Before we get started, I just want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark VPN. Whether you're delving into archives to research classified military technology, managing accounts across social media, online stores and gaming platforms, or just trying to stream your favourite movies and TV shows, or let's say you want to watch a particular military tech video that's been blocked in your country, well, the troops need a VPN, and the one I used every day in fact is Surfshark. With just a couple of clicks I can bypass region locks and watch movies and series and access videos and websites blocked in any country, along with being notified if my information is ever found on untrustworthy websites. It's simple, fast, reliable, safe, and one of the top rated VPN providers in the world. Head to the link in the description below and use the code KOALA, and not only will you get a whopping 83% off your first month, but an additional 3 months absolutely free. That's 4 months of complete online security for less than the price of a cup of coffee. If you're nae happy or don't think it's for you, there's no muss, no fuss, because Surfshark gives you a 30-day money-back guarantee as well. So I highly recommend trying them out. I'm super happy with them. So thank you to them for supporting this channel, and now on with the video. In our last episode of Koala Explains, we answered why tanks raise their gun barrels after firing. And one of the most common misconceptions a lot of you guys seem to believe was that tanks do this to help expel the gases from firing out of the end of the barrel, which is not the case. The immense pressure and harmful burning gases involved in firing rounds from a 120mm gun do need to be kept away from the soft and squishy crew members in the fighting compartment, but those gases are heavier than air, and the raising of the gun barrel isn't what's forcing them outwards. Instead, that responsibility falls to what is known as a bore evacuator or fume extractor, and that's what you'll see bulging out of the barrels of many of these large caliber guns since the Second World War era. A bore evacuator is a very simple device which consists of a hollow round chamber adjacent to the main barrel of the gun. Gases produced when firing the gun quickly flood into the bore evacuator chamber through a ring of holes in the barrel itself. They are then pulled back out of the chamber and out of the tip of the gun by the drop in pressure and the vacuum effect, as the round leaves the end of the barrel and flies off to go do some very nasty things elsewhere. As the gases begin to leave the barrel, they create almost a siphoning effect which pulls the rest out after them, and you can often see the little puff of smoke follow the round out of the gun a split second after it's been fired. Simple. While the sudden and immense increase in pressure does force most of the gas out of the barrel anyway, with larger and larger guns packing more and more explosive behind their rounds, more of these harmful materials would be left in the barrel after the pressure returns to normal, and that can cause problems. With the bore evacuator, however, the additional space creates enough of a pressure differential to pull them out and clear the gun before the loader opens up the breech and loads a new round. That really is all you need to know about what these things are, and while many people have noted that the German-made L44 and L55 120mm guns are built in 2 pieces, and the join between them is right at the evacuator chamber, this is coincidental only, and is actually nothing to do with the extractor itself. You'll see such bulging bore evacuator chambers on a huge number of different cannons, from the 120mm guns on the Abrams, Leopard 2, Challenger, and various other MBTs, to the older L7 105mm rifles used on a huge number of vehicles, the massive artillery guns on the M109 Paladin, AS90 or Type 75, and even some smaller cannons like the 76mm on the South African Rooikat, or the Otto Malara 76 used on both ground vehicles and a variety of naval vessels. That last part suggests that not only is size not the defining factor in the use or not of these Fume extractors, but they're not even unique to tanks and ground vehicles either, nor do they have anything to do with autoloaders. The 76mm gun is the main close-in anti-surface weapon of choice of a variety of corvettes and frigates the world over, and the British 4.5-inch gun used on the Sheffield class of destroyers, for example, also features a bore evacuator, for the exact same reason the M1 Abrams has one. What defines the need for a bore evacuator is the pressure experienced when firing the gun. So for example, as a low pressure, low velocity gun, the 90mm on the Panhard AML and the 76mm on the FV101 Scorpion don't require an evacuator, though in the Scorpion's case, I doubt you'd have room for one anyway. Despite being a smaller diameter than either, however, the Italian 60mm HVMS cannon does feature a bore evacuator, as it produces a much higher muzzle velocity, which increases the pressure enough to warrant one. I believe this is the smallest caliber gun to use the system, while on the other extreme, the mighty 203mm artillery cannon of the American M110 doesn't have a bore evacuator. This is because the gun and breech, as well as the crew, are open to the air, and thus there's no danger of gases building up, as they can simply flow out the breech when it's opened, without causing damage to the crew either. There are a few other cases where you won't see bore evacuators, however, such as on French tanks like the AMX-30 or Leclerc, or the Russian T14 Armata. These vehicles use an alternative system, by which air is actively blown through the gun after firing to expel the gases outwards, and this practice actually dates back to World War II, where the German Panther tank with its 75mm gun featured a similar system, as if that tank wasn't too overcomplicated already. Given that France inherited a large number of Panthers to recoup their decimated tank force after the war's end, French tank designers had experience working with it when it came to creating the next generation of French tanks, and the system became just as ubiquitous among French AFVs as the bulging evacuator chamber did for the rest of the world. In the T14 Armata's case, it's actually unknown whether it too features a similar air-blowing system or simply doesn't need one at all, given that its turret is completely unmanned, cut off from the fighting compartment, and its autoloader and gun exist in a closed loop. So there'd be no danger from the gas if some were to flow back anyway. In the case, however, of the Mark 45 5-inch naval gun, much bigger than the Italian 76, the barrel is cleared of gas by the air-blowing system as well, despite being enclosed and away from any sailors, so it's most likely the Armata does this too. The rest of the NATO tank world doesn't seem to want to adopt this system, however, with Rheinmetall's 130 and 140mm guns still featuring that signature bulge of the more simple bore evacuator. While the Panther can be considered the first tank to feature a bore evacuation or fume extraction system in its puff of air to push gases out of the front of the barrel, the first tanks and guns to feature the bulge itself of the mechanical method are not what you might expect. It's commonly said that the Royal Ordnance L7 gun, first seen on the Mark 7 Centurion in 1958, pioneered the use of the bore evacuator. But this is Wikipedia being Wikipedia, and is completely untrue. In fact, the first tank with this signature feature can also be found during the Second World War on the T-53 120mm gun of the American T34 Heavy tank prototype, built in 1945. Later on, the US M46 Patton and Soviet T-54B would feature bore evacuators in serial production, and this was one of the main ways in which both tanks improved over their predecessors, the earlier M26 Pershing and T-54A respectively, with their new guns with bore evacuators, allowing them to utilise higher pressure ammunition. I'm not sure entirely why some tanks feature bore evacuators biased towards the base or the tip of the gun, but I suspect it has to do with counterbalance and weight distribution. As for the use of traditional bore evacuators or the German-derived air-blowing system, the German word for I wouldn't even try to pronounce, but it translates to blowout mechanism, which was later popularised by French tanks, there are pros and cons of each. Bore evacuators do create a point of structural weakness in the construction of the gun, requiring more frequent maintenance, and are incredibly difficult to clean, while on the other hand, the air-blowing mechanism is more expensive to build in, adds another point of potential failure, and unlike with a bore evacuator, if this system fails or isn't properly maintained, the gun is effectively rendered unsafe to use. Who knows which system may replace the other completely in future, although I should point out that a Leclerc prototype with a domestically designed 140mm gun was also the first French tank to ever feature a traditional bore evacuator. Given the steadily increasing focus in modern tanks, particularly in Europe, of interoperability and compatibility with other nations, this is no surprise. And while various sources may point to the Panthers or the AMX-30 and Leclerc's so-called blowout mechanism as being a bore evacuator, if you really want to split hairs, this is not the case. These systems replace bore evacuators and fill their role instead, and while I'm not going to argue with historians like Nick Moran or Hilary Doyle, I expect they've called these systems bore evacuators just to avoid confusing or distracting viewers rather than going off on a tangent about semantics. But what do you come to this channel for? Anyway, that is all we have time for today. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Koala Explains, learned something from it, and now you can go chew someone else's ear off. I know many of you have commented on our previous videos that we go into a lot more detail and spend a lot more time talking about these simple topics and questions that could be answered in a couple of sentences. And not only do we do this because a 40-second video that just answers the question would be kind of pointless to create, but we also get to answer the next few questions that will no doubt pop up in many viewers' minds, like when were they first used and why don't certain guns have them? If you like our work, be sure to subscribe for more every week, and until the next one, thank you for watching, stay safe, and I'll catch you on the battlefield. Thank you to all our supporters on Patreon for making this video possible, with a special thanks to Mo, Ian Anderson, Universe, Dean Winger, Sukoshi Tiger, and Captain Fubar. If you like this video, then I hope you subscribe and check out our other content, and if you really like what we do here, then consider supporting the channel on Patreon. And thanks for watching. Seriously, I hadn't actually played this map until today, right? But oh my god is it fun. Now the actual map itself and the terrain doesn't have much elevation to it, but the tall buildings make it play completely differently to any other map, because even the mountains on the Jeonju map are large and only exist on one side, and in Afghanistan there are big open spaces between them. But these buildings, man, holy shit, I could play this all day.